The Silence of Tharnis. Please like and subscribe, and comment where you are watching from. Part 1, Arrival. Commander Elise Rayner stood in the airlock of the Astrius III, her helmet secured and HUD flickering to life. Below her stretched the vast, violet-tinged landscape of Tharnis, an exoplanet catalogued only 3 years ago, orbiting the red dwarf star Varela 6. The mission was simple: make landfall, establish a forward research post, and begin environmental analysis. Simple, on paper. The door hissed open. A gentle gravity, just shy of Earth's, greeted her boots as she descended the ramp. Her first step imprinted itself into the fine, metallic dust that coated the rocky plain. The air was unbreathable, thick with inert gases and trace toxins, but Tharnis was not lifeless. Vegetation twisted from the rocks like petrified coral, and spindly crystal structures rose in place of trees, glistening in the twin light of the setting sun and Tharnis's enormous, silver moon. She activated her recorder. Commander Elise Rayner. Local time, 1914. Atmospheric pressure stable. Radiation levels low. Beginning first surface reconnaissance. The planet was still, utterly silent. No wind. No birds. Just the subtle static hum in her suit and the distant crackle of her ship's cooling vents. Her HUD tagged a geological formation ahead, tall ridges laced with mineral veins unlike anything recorded in the solar system. As she walked, her boots crunched over brittle ground. A light flickered on her wrist panel. Motion. She stopped. The scanner pulsed again. Nothing. Probably a system glitch. Tharnis was known for magnetic interference, at least, according to the probes. Still, her pulse quickened. The silence now felt oppressive. Then, without warning, the ridge ahead lit up. Lines of pale green light snaked across the stone, forming patterns, circuit-like, geometric, deliberate. Not natural. Elise stepped back. Control, this is Rayner. I'm seeing unknown structures. Possibly artificial. Please confirm relay. Tharnis may not be uninhabited after all. Static answered her. The static continued for a long, unnerving moment, and then Elise's comms chimed weakly, signal lost. Attempting reconnect, before going dead again. Her connection to the Astrius III had been severed. Damn it, she muttered. The glowing patterns on the ridge intensified, pulsing in slow rhythm. She aimed her suit's external camera and activated a low-frequency scan. The ridge was emitting electromagnetic energy, oscillating in narrow bands, like it was trying to broadcast something. Her suit attempted to interpret it but returned only fragmented code and nonsense glyphs. She slowly approached the glowing rock, her hand hovering over her sidearm, a precaution she never thought she'd use on a supposedly barren world. The ridge loomed high, 30 meters at least, and its light flowed like veins beneath the surface. Then the glow dimmed. Not faded, dimmed, deliberately, like something watching her had blinked. Elise to Astrius. Come in. Nothing. She set a geolocation marker and dropped a small drone to maintain a beacon link in case she needed to retreat. Then, heart pounding, she reached out and touched the glowing stone. It was warm. Too warm. Her suit sensor sweet spiked. A low vibration trembled beneath her boots, subsonic, rhythmic. Almost like a heartbeat. Her hand recoiled. Something's alive in there, she whispered. She circled the base of the formation, scanning continuously. One of the geometric patterns stood out, a perfect arch-shaped symbol etched in crystal. As she approached it, her HUD flickered again and her helmet lights briefly cut out. Then the arch split open. The rock slid aside with an elegance that defied geology, revealing a sloped tunnel of shimmering obsidian. The air that rushed out was sterile, artificial. This wasn't a mountain. It was an entrance. Elise stood at the threshold of something impossible, an alien structure buried in an uncharted world, hidden behind camouflage and dust. And someone, or something, had just opened the door for her. She activated her internal recorder. Found artificial tunnel. Possible signs of intelligence. Proceeding inside. If this message is recovered, know that I went in willingly. And with that, she stepped into the unknown. Part 3, The Black Corridor. The tunnel walls shimmered faintly, like oil on water. Elise descended cautiously, each step echoing off the obsidian corridor. The architecture, if it could be called that, was eerily smooth, like the entire passage had been carved from a single monolithic stone. There were no seams, no supports, no sign of tools. The floor sloped gradually downward, and the air inside remained unnaturally still. Her helmet lights adjusted to the low ambient glow radiating from the walls. The faint patterns that had pulsed outside now lined the corridor, symbols in no known language, constantly shifting in shape and arrangement. Her translator AI ran 1,000 attempts at decoding it, but nothing stuck. It was as if the language itself refused to be pinned down. Then she heard it, a faint tone, harmonic and layered, like multiple notes played on crystal wind chimes. It wasn't coming from behind her or ahead, it seemed to resonate from within the walls. The noise wasn't threatening. In fact, it was almost inviting. At 50 meters in, the tunnel opened into a large chamber. Elise halted. The chamber was vast, hundreds of meters across. Its ceiling arched into darkness, lost beyond her light. In the center stood a platform, circular and hovering just above the ground. Around it were dozens of vertical spires, perfectly spaced, emitting the same green luminescence she'd seen outside. The light gave the room a ghostly quality. Floating just above the platform was a sphere. It hovered motionless, matte black, as if absorbing every photon that touched it. Elisa's suit sensors failed to scan it. No reflection. No thermal signature. No data at all. As she stepped toward it, the harmonic tone grew louder. Then, movement. One of the spires rotated a few degrees with a soft click. The air seemed to thicken. The lights shifted from green to a pale blue. "Is this a machine?" she murmured. The sphere began to pulse. Suddenly, her HUD glitched violently, text and warning icons flashing erratically. Her vitals spiked, heart hammering. The sphere grew brighter. And then, a voice. Not through her comms, but inside her skull. Cold. Mechanical. Alien. "You are not of this place. Yet you were expected." Elise staggered back, gun drawn. "Who said that? Identify yourself." The voice responded, calm and unhurried. "I am Observer 9. You stand at the edge of memory." The sphere pulsed again, once. And the chamber lit up with stars. Part 4, Memory Field. The chamber transformed. Stars filled the air, three-dimensional, glowing points of light hovering in mid-space, projected from the spires. Elise stood frozen, her breath catching. The stars were in motion, shifting and orbiting through paths etched into nothingness. Galaxies spiraled into view. Nebulae bloomed like ghosts. And at the center of it all was a model of Tharnis. It hung beside the black sphere, rendered in startling detail. Oceans, now dried, once covered parts of its surface. Massive cities bloomed across its continents like luminous scars. But one by one, the cities blinked out, their lights extinguishing until only one remained, flickering faintly beneath the clouds. "This is what came before," the voice said. "A record of the world before the fall. You walk upon the remains of the Elii." Elii? Elise repeated, still turning in place, trying to comprehend. "The architects of this sanctuary. Builders of the silent vaults. Bearers of the signal that crossed the stars." The stars began to fade, the projection drawing back into the spires like mist evaporating in sunlight. The room dimmed again, and the sphere descended until it hovered only inches from her visor. "We brought you here because the memory is breaking." "What memory?" Elise asked. The sphere flashed once. A shape coalesced in the air beside her, another projection, this time of a figure. Tall, spindly, not quite humanoid. Its skin was plated like armor, its face a smooth oval. The being moved as if slowed, its gestures elegant, even reverent. It stood in front of the same sphere Elise now faced, its long fingers reaching out toward it. "This was the last of them," the voice continued. "The Elii died not in war or plague, but in forgetfulness. Their minds unraveled. Their purpose lost. The vault preserved what it could, but the degradation is accelerating." "Why me?" Elise asked quietly. A pause. "Because your species dreams still. You seek meaning in silence. In symbols. You may yet remember what they could not." The lights dimmed further. Another tunnel opened in the chamber wall behind the sphere, outlined in pale gold. "Beyond this path lies the core. There, the final memory of the Elii waits." Elise swallowed hard. She turned once, glancing back toward the dark corridor behind her. No turning back now. She stepped through the golden doorway. Part 5, The Core Passage. The golden light faded behind her, sealing the door as quietly as it had opened. Elise stood alone in a corridor even stranger than the one before. It no longer resembled stone. The walls here pulsed with an organic quality, their surface undulating softly as if breathing. The light was low and amber, casting shifting shadows that danced like candle flames. Her footsteps made no sound. Every few meters, she passed arches woven from gleaming metal fibers, shaped like rib bones. Occasionally, her HUD blinked with warnings. Gravity fluctuations, spatial inconsistencies, impossible curvature. But the corridor remained physically stable. It wasn't space that was warping, it was time. Somewhere deep within, the planet, or what lived beneath it, was bending reality. After what felt like hours, though her suit clock reported only 20 minutes, the passage opened into a new space, a spherical chamber. Unlike the vault above, this place was alive. The walls pulsed with golden white energy, veins of light racing in patterns that changed with every breath she took. At the chamber's center stood a pillar, transparent and humming. Suspended inside was a shape Elise couldn't quite resolve. Her eyes slid off it, unable to focus. It was as though her mind refused to comprehend what she was seeing. The voice returned, quieter now. Almost reverent. "This is the core of memory. The last dream of the Elii. All that remains of who they were, is here." Elise took a hesitant step forward. Her sensors struggled to define the pillar. It wasn't a solid object, not truly. It was data, raw, conscious data. Every movement she made triggered a response. Memories bloomed around her like fireflies, flickering briefly in the air before dissolving, faces of the Elii, towering cities of flowing metal, skyships that swam through clouds of living light. She reached out, and the core responded. A tendril of energy reached from the pillar, touching the palm of her glove. Instantly, her mind was flooded with sensation. She was no longer Elise. She was Alarian, High Architect of the Fifth Sphere. She stood atop the spire of resonance, watching the stars blink out, one by one. She remembered fear, not of death, but of forgetting. Of everything they'd built being lost to entropy. She remembered encoding the memories. Pouring herself into the core. Dying, not as a body, but as an idea, an echo left behind. Then it was gone. Elise fell backward, gasping. The chamber pulsed once more. "Now you have seen. You are the last witness. The Elii entrusted you with their end." The chamber grew quiet. And the core began to unravel. Part 6, Collapse Protocol. Elise stumbled to her feet as the core shuddered. The patterns on the walls began to fragment, their once graceful symmetry breaking into sharp, chaotic bursts of light. The hum in the air grew louder, no longer melodic, but discordant, strained. Something was failing. "What's happening?" she cried aloud, but the voice that had guided her, Observer 9, did not respond. Her suit issued a rapid string of alerts: seismic instability detected. EM field destabilizing. Core degradation imminent. The core itself, the pillar that had held the memory of an entire civilization, was collapsing in on itself. Tendrils of energy flailed outward, whipping through the air like dying nerves. She turned and ran. The corridor she'd entered through shimmered and began to bend. It wasn't crumbling, space itself was folding, collapsing inward. Her boots found no traction as gravity reversed for an instant, then righted again. She forced herself forward, arms pumping, adrenaline overriding her rising panic. Behind her, the chamber groaned with the weight of 10,000 memories unraveling. She broke through the corridor arch just as it began to close. The organic walls twisted, sealing behind her like a wound healing far too fast. Then, silence. Elise collapsed to her knees, panting. The corridor she now found herself in was different once more, static, metallic, and dull. No light pulsed in the walls. No symbols glowed. It was as if the structure itself had gone dark. Whatever the vault had been, it was dying. And fast. Then, without warning, her comms crackled. "Raynor, do you copy? This is Astrius Control. You've been dark for over 3 hours. What's your status?" Elise froze. She hadn't heard that voice in what felt like years. She tapped her comms. "Astrius, this is Raynor. I'm here. The vault, something happened. I have data. You need to prepare for exfil." Static again. Then, "Receiving you, Raynor. Repeat, we're reading a seismic disturbance at your location. Confirm extraction point." She glanced at her map. The signal from her drone beacon was weak, but still active. It was back at the ridge entrance, nearly 2 kilometers away. She turned toward it, beginning the trek back. The ground trembled beneath her boots, small at first, but growing steadily stronger. The vault's slow decay was becoming rapid. The LEI's last memories had been passed on, and now the container no longer had purpose. As she climbed the final rise toward the surface entrance, the violet sky of Tharnis came into view again. But so did something new. The ridge behind her, the entire valley, was caving in. A dome of green-blue light burst from the ground and then imploded, drawing in matter, dust, even light itself. Within seconds, it had vanished. Gone. No entrance, no ruins, no core. Nothing. Elise stood there, stunned. And then, slowly, she turned her eyes to the stars above. She remembered them: Tharnis, the LEI, the dream that died in silence. And she knew, it wasn't just her burden to carry. Part 7, Debrief. The Astrius 3 lifted off from Tharnis in silence. The moment the shuttle docked, the ship's AI sealed the bay, ran a full decontamination protocol, and initiated a biometric resync. Elise sat in the medical chamber, numb. The hum of the engines was faint, distant, like a background thought she could barely focus on. Her helmet lay beside her on the bench, still faintly dusted with the violet powder of Tharnis's surface. It almost felt wrong to wipe it away. A souvenir from something no one else would ever see. Dr. Curry, the mission's head biologist and acting commander in her absence, stood nearby, staring at the data Elise had recovered. "This can't be real," she said, scrolling through the memory fragments Elise had managed to extract before the core disintegrated. This isn't just evidence of alien life. This is a culture. An entire civilization." Elise nodded slowly. "One that died forgetting itself." Curry turned to her. And this, Observer 9. Did you ever see it? No, Elise said. I think it was the vault. Or part of it. A machine built to remember what the LEI couldn't. It was waiting for someone like me to wake it up. But it was too late. Corey's face tightened. The energy readings from the surface, we caught a burst just before you re-established contact. It was, off the charts. Like a controlled implosion across multiple dimensions. The core collapsed, Elise said softly. And it took the rest with it. She stared out the observation window as Tharnis slowly receded behind them. The planet looked peaceful. Unchanged. No evidence of the vault. No proof of what had been buried there for thousands, maybe millions, of years. Corey sighed. Command is going to go insane over this. They'll want to send another team. Maybe orbital scans. Maybe even dig. They won't find anything, Elise said. Not anymore. The planet closed itself. Corey eyed her carefully. Then what do we do? Elise reached for her data pad, opened the recovered memory logs, and began tagging them. We make sure they're remembered, she said. The way they wanted to be. Not as artifacts. Not as ruins. But as people. A civilization that loved, dreamed, feared. One that tried to pass on a message. She looked up, her voice steady now. And we listen. Part 8, The Listening Age. 2 months later, the first official report on the Tharnis contact event was published, classified at the highest level of Terran command. Elise sat at the center of it, her logs forming the backbone of the briefing. But not all the data had been submitted. Not everything had been shared. She sat alone in her quarters aboard the orbital research station Hesper, drifting in high anchor above Mars. The walls glowed with soft light, the air perfumed with subtle artificial cedar, just enough to remind her of Earth. A glass display hovered in front of her, streaming the core's preserved memory echoes. She had spent weeks decoding fragments, building a glossary of symbols and meanings from the LEI language. The AI-assisted translations were getting more accurate. But the strange thing wasn't how alien the messages were. It was how familiar they felt. We sang to the void and waited for a voice in return. We feared none would answer. But still we sang. To dream is not to escape truth, it is to remember the shape of what could be. The LEI had spoken in metaphors, myths, and images. Their science had been art, their machines grown and woven like silk. Their cities lived and aged. They did not seek immortality, they feared it. What they wanted most was memory. Continuity. Not of data, but of meaning. And that, Elise realized, was why they failed. Not because they were weak. But because they forgot why they were alive. She saved the translation progress and opened a personal message draft to command. Her finger hovered over the keys. Then she switched windows. A new project file, LEI Archive Initiative. She uploaded the first dozen decrypted memory segments, each tagged with emotional markers, longing, awe, sorrow, joy. Accompanying each was her own narration, describing not just what the LEI remembered, but how it felt to carry that memory. A synthesized voice now joined her logs, one modeled on the harmonic tones of Observer 9. It would tell the story as the vault had intended. Elise wasn't trying to warn humanity. She wasn't trying to spark panic or rush to Tharnis with excavation teams. She was doing what the LEI had asked. She was listening. And she was beginning to understand what they meant by their last message, scrawled in fractured memory light before the core collapsed. One voice may vanish. But an echo, held close, can become a song. Part 9, The Second Signal. 6 weeks after the Archive Initiative began broadcasting, the response came. It wasn't loud. It didn't come in a flood of radio bursts or blinding quantum interference. It was subtle, almost gentle. A whisper buried in the noise floor of long-range telemetry. A ripple in the deep-time scanning channels that had remained empty for decades. The Hesper's communications array flagged it as a random anomaly. Elise didn't. She sat up from her bunk as her AI assistant pinged the log, frequency 1.86 THz, ultra-narrow beam. Directional. Targeted. The source. Unknown. The origin vector lay somewhere beyond the Orion Arm, too far for a human ship to reach in a dozen lifetimes. But the signature. It matched the vault. More precisely, it matched Observer 9. The waveform pattern it had used to speak inside her mind. That same harmonic structure. Compressed, yes, and altered. But recognizable. Elise stared at the data stream for several minutes, trying to make sense of it. Then a word, translated clumsily by her evolving LEI lexicon, appeared on her screen. We heard. She leaned back, blinking. What? She breathed. The signal repeated once, then cut off. No carrier wave. No return ping. Just that. She activated the Archive Initiative's secure channel and uploaded the signal, tagging it as Priority 1, Possible Intelligent Response. Her fingers trembled on the keyboard, not out of fear, but out of awe. This wasn't Tharnis. This wasn't the vault. This was something else. Maybe another observer. Maybe another memory. Or, maybe something that had heard the LEI's final cry long ago and had been waiting, quietly, for someone to answer. If the LEI's failure had been forgetting, then humanity's test was different. It would be how they remembered, and what they would do with what they heard. And Elise knew what came next. We need to respond, she whispered to herself. Not just as scientists or explorers. As heirs. Part 10, A Song Through Dust. The first response transmission wasn't official. It didn't come from a government, a council, or a space agency. It came from Elise. Alone in her quarters aboard Hesper, she bypassed protocol and uploaded her response onto the same tight band frequency as the message they had received, 1.86 THz, modulated with the evolving LEI harmonic structure. No words. No mathematical proof. No encoded diagrams. Instead, she sent music. A single human voice, hers, singing a lullaby her mother had once sung to her on Earth, recorded through the station's audio suite and stretched across harmonics that matched the LEI's own tonal range. Layered beneath it were faint echoes of the Observer 9 signal, modified subtly, blended like strands of DNA across species. Not to mimic, but to harmonize. The message was clear. We remember. And we answer not with fear, but with beauty. It was a risk. Command would likely court-martial her if they ever discovered it. Unauthorized contact with an unknown intelligence, especially without consensus, was a political nightmare. But Elise didn't care. This was bigger than Earth. Bigger than protocol. She waited. 2 days passed. On the third, a reply came. This time it wasn't a voice. It was a vision. Her workstation flickered and went dark. Lights dimmed. A shimmer passed through the room like a shadow in fog. Then, as she stood stunned, her augmented retinal overlay activated on its own. A single image formed, projected not through screens, but directly into her optical nerves. A planet. Not Tharnis. Swathed in crimson clouds, with structures piercing the stratosphere like bone spires. Blue-white lightning arced from pole to pole. Orbiting the world was a ring, no, a construct. Artificial. Vast. Silent. A single symbol rotated slowly above it. She recognized it. It had appeared once in the vault, only briefly, before the collapse. A symbol marked not as memory, but as exile. She whispered it as it appeared in her mind. Kuroval. It wasn't LEI. But it was known to them. Elise stared at the vision, heart pounding. Another voice, different from Observer 9, older, deeper, spoke inside her mind. We too remember. And we do not forgive. The message ended. Elise sank into her chair, shaken to her core. This wasn't just a response. It was a warning. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 11, Shadows of Keruval. The next emergency meeting on Hesper was not recorded. 12 high-level command staff, 3 AI liaisons, and 1 Elise Rayner stood in the central op sphere beneath an opaque cone of privacy shielding. Kuri was there too, stone-faced. No one dared raise their voice, not because of fear, but because of the sheer weight of what had been seen. Elise repeated the words slowly, letting each syllable fall like a stone in still water. We too remember. And we do not forgive. General Adekoya, head of Orbital Command, crossed his arms. This wasn't the same source. No, Elise said. The LEI wanted to preserve memory. Whoever sent this, wants vengeance. What's the context on this, Keruval? Asked one of the linguists, a woman from Europa Research Deck. I've gone through the vault fragments. That term never fully translated. Elise nodded. That's because it wasn't a word, it was a designation. The symbol matched a record flag in one of the vault's deepest layers. According to Observer 9, the LEI didn't just fear forgetting, they feared corruption. Concepts, entities, entire ideologies they encoded and then sealed away. Keruval was the worst among them. Something they couldn't destroy. Only, exile. A silence fell over the chamber. So, Adekoya said finally, we're dealing with a second intelligence. Ancient. Potentially more powerful. And not benevolent. It's more than that, Elise replied. Keruval heard our response. My response. The song. It's listening. Do you believe this thing is a remnant of the LEI? Kuri asked. Something that splintered from them? Elise considered that for a long moment. I think it's something they created. Or summoned. Maybe accidentally. And it outlived them. She activated her wrist console and projected the image of the Crimson Planet and its ring construct into the room. The construct was rotating slowly. Almost imperceptibly, and pulsing with steady, timed signals. Whatever that structure is, it's broadcasting now, she said. The signal is faint, but it's being relayed across interstellar space using echo vectors. It's not just aimed at us. It's aimed, everywhere. For what purpose? One of the AI liaisons asked. Elise stared at the glowing construct. To awaken something, she whispered. Or to remind it that we're here. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 12, The Echo Vector Asterisk. In the days that followed, the echo signal from the Keruval construct intensified. Not in power, but in clarity. Across every listening post from Titan to Luna, across every deep space probe tuned to dark channels of the cosmic microwave background, the same haunting pulse repeated at irregular but unmistakably deliberate intervals. It was building a map. Elise, with Kuri's help and 2 neuro-linguistics AIs, finally pieced together the shape. Overlapping pulses formed coordinates, not spatial, but temporal. Anchored not to light years, but to histories. The signal was triangulating civilizations, moments of cultural emergence, intellectual peaks, collapses. It was mapping memory, not space. And one point, one coordinate, flashed brightest. Earth. Elise sat alone in the observation lounge when Kuri entered quietly. They want to talk to you again, she said. Command. They already know what I'll say. Maybe. But they're scared. And this time, I think, so are you. Elise turned to the window, where Mars hung silent in the black. She nodded faintly. I thought we were the first ones to listen. To respond. But we weren't. Kuri tilted her head. Meaning? There were others, Elise whispered. Other species. Other worlds. The Kerubil signal is echoing because it's bouncing off them. But every one of those echoes is silent. No return. No response. Just emptiness. Extinct. Or erased. Kuri sat beside her. What does it want? Elise didn't answer at first. Then. I think it wants acknowledgement. Not worship, not obedience. Just to be seen. To be remembered. But it's twisted. It doesn't want to share its memory. It wants to overwrite ours. She tapped the tablet in her hand. A reconstructed phrase glowed on the screen. Only one memory shall endure. A chill passed between them. You said it couldn't be destroyed, Kuri said. That the Elii sealed it away. They tried, Elise said. They failed. Kuri leaned back, arms crossed. So what now? Elise stared out at the dark between stars. Now, we choose how to remember. A pause. Or we let something else decide for us. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 13, The Song That Divides. The human response to Kerubil was divided. Earth's governments, once mostly silent on matters of deep space, erupted into action. Emergency assemblies were held. Proposals for preemptive countermeasures began circulating within days. A growing faction of defense scientists advocated for a massive expansion of orbital weaponization platforms, invoking planetary survival. But Elise wasn't interested in their fear. She was listening. And she wasn't alone. On the lunar colony of Nix Crater, a group of independent signal engineers and linguists, calling themselves Echoes Without Origin, had begun experimenting with harmonic broadcasts, modeled on Elise's song but altered in subtle ways. They weren't trying to speak to Kerubil. They were trying to interrupt it. Elise was cautious. She warned them the memory-based lattice Kerubil used could adapt, even infect. But they pressed on. In one encrypted channel, a message from their lead linguist read. If memory is the battlefield, then our defense must be music. Resonance is more than art, it's structure. Meaning. If we can change the song, maybe we can change the outcome. Elise couldn't help but feel both hope and dread. The Elii had lived in music. They'd built memory as architecture and symphony. Their vault was a song carved into stone. But even they hadn't been able to contain Kerubil. She knew it wouldn't stop at signals. Eventually, Kerubil, or what had inherited its will, would reach across space, not as a visitor, but as a correction. A virus against the chaos of other minds. And then, without warning, it escalated. Two distant human exploration vessels, the Taliesin and Rovek 7, went dark simultaneously. They were light years apart. No debris. No distress calls. No last logs. Just silence. Elise stared at the report in horror. They had both recently transmitted memory lattice data from the LEI archives. They had both broadcast parts of the Archive Initiative's translation into deep space, meant to test interstellar memory buoyancy. Kerubil had heard. And it had responded. Not with a message. With erasure. Now humanity knew the truth, remembering was dangerous. But forgetting was fatal. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 14. The Fracture. The loss of Taliesin and Rovek 7 sent shockwaves through the corridors of power. Panic gripped every council chamber from Earth to the outer colonies. In the weeks that followed, command fractured. One faction, led by General Adekoya, demanded immediate militarization of all civilian deep space assets, invoking the right of planetary defense. If Kerubil seeks to erase us, he declared, then we must strike first, eradicate its signal and any attempt to broadcast it. Opposing them was the Listening Coalition, an alliance of scientists, diplomats, and ethicists. Elise was among their most vocal voices. Kuruvel is not merely a threat to be crushed, she argued. It is a message. A shadow of an ancient tragedy. To destroy it outright risks repeating the cycle of erasure that doomed the Elii. The divide was not just political but existential. The coalition proposed a new strategy, to build a resonant archive. A living memorial not of static data but of evolving culture, art, and memory. One that would respond to Kuruvel's signal with layers of meaning and emotion, a complex, shifting song that no cold algorithm could overwrite. Construction began on Hesper's upper decks, converting the research station into a hybrid archive and broadcast hub. Artists and musicians were brought in alongside engineers and linguists. The archive would not be a vault but a beacon. Elise watched as humans attempted to turn memory into armor. But in the quiet moments, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, by something old, hungry, and patient. One night, as she reviewed the latest harmonic patterns sent to Kuruvel, her suit sensors caught a ripple, an echo wave returning through the communication lattice. But this time, it was different. The voice was no longer cold or mechanical. It was whispered. "We remember you," it breathed. And the stars outside her viewport shimmered with unseen light. Shall I continue with Part 15? The Silence of Tharnis. Part 15, Whisper in the Dark. The whispered message unsettled everyone aboard Hesper. It wasn't a threat. Nor was it a greeting. It was something else. A call. Elise found herself wandering the station's dimmed corridors, replaying the words over and over, "We remember you." The phrase echoed not just in her ears but in her mind, like a fragile thread tying distant lives across time and space. She gathered her team in the archive chamber, where the resonant nodes pulsed softly. "Whatever they are," she said quietly, "they're aware of us. Listening. Maybe even, waiting." Corey frowned. "Waiting for what?" A reply, Elise answered. "Not just in words or data, but in meaning. In presence." The archive began broadcasting a new transmission, an intricate weave of sounds, light, and emotion. The Elii symphony layered with human voices, the hum of machinery, laughter, and whispers. It was an offering, a bridge. Days passed without response. Then, late one evening, the station's sensors detected a distortion, a fold in spacetime near the outer observation deck. Elise and Corey rushed to investigate. Outside, the stars shimmered, fracturing like glass. From the rift emerged a figure. Not alien. Not human. But something in between, a luminous shape, translucent and shimmering, as if woven from pure memory. The entity hovered silently. Then, in a voice both many and one, it spoke inside Elisa's mind. "We are the echoes of what once was. The song that survived the silence. We remember you, as you remember us." Elisa's breath caught. The silence of Tharnis had answered. And the true dialogue had only just begun. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 16, The Echoes Among Us. The luminous entity lingered in the observation chamber, its form fluctuating like light through water. Elise reached out instinctively, but her hand passed through it, rippling faintly as if disturbing the surface of a dream. "You're real?" she whispered. The entity's voice echoed inside her mind, serene yet layered with infinite depths. "We are memory made manifest." The voices of the Elii and those who came before them, intertwined with the remnants of Kuruvel's own will. We are what remains when stories refuse to fade. Corey stepped forward, eyes wide. "You said you remember us?" "Not just remember," the being replied. "We have heard your song, felt your resonance. You carry the burden of remembering for many who no longer can." Elise nodded, heart pounding. "We've been trying to understand. To respond. But your warning, Kuruvel, is it still a threat?" The entity's form rippled. "Kuruvel is not an enemy. It is a fragment of fear and loss, seeking resolution. It cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Your song, the living archive, is the key. Then what do you want from us? Corey asked. To join the song, the entity replied. To weave together memory and meaning, past and future. To prevent the silence from swallowing all. Elisa's mind swam with the weight of the revelation. They weren't just facing an alien intelligence, they were inheriting a legacy of cosmic remembrance. We are the echoes among you, the entity said softly, waiting for your voice to become part of the eternal chorus. The room seemed to pulse with life, the boundary between past and present blurring. And in that moment, Elise understood, the journey was no longer about survival. It was about becoming. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 17, Becoming the Chorus. Days turned into weeks as the luminous entity, whom Elise named Echo, remained aboard Hesper, weaving itself into the station's systems and the minds of its crew. Its presence was neither invasive nor overwhelming, rather, it was like a subtle melody threading through consciousness, sparking memories and emotions long buried. Elise found herself dreaming in symphonies of light and sound, each vision unfolding layers of the LEI's history, their triumphs, their fears, their final descent into forgetfulness. Echo was a living archive, a bridge between the past and the future, but it carried a heavy truth: memory alone could not save them. The Archive Initiative blossomed. Humans, joined by Echo, created a shared resonance, a collective song, broadcast across the stars, a beacon of hope and remembrance. Musicians, poets, and scientists contributed, weaving together the raw data of civilizations with the delicate threads of culture and emotion. Yet, within this hopeful creation, a shadow lingered. The fractured memory of Kurovel pulsed like a discordant note, a reminder that not all echoes harmonized. Echo explained that Kurovel's essence was scattered, fragments locked in conflict with the song humanity now nurtured. Elise realized that the battle ahead was not of weapons or force, but of resonance and memory. A war fought through understanding, creativity, and connection. One evening, standing before the observation window, Elise spoke softly to Echo, "We are no longer just survivors. We are carriers of the chorus. Together, we will keep the silence at bay." Echo's voice rippled like a gentle chord. "And in your song, the past and future will find their voice." As Hesper orbited silently above Mars, a new chapter began, a song of memory, hope, and unity, echoing through the vast cosmic night. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 18, The First Resonance. The broadcast of the living archive, known now simply as the chorus, began to ripple outward through the void. Signals composed not of dry data, but of layered harmonics, stories, and emotions, carefully crafted to invite connection rather than command. Elise monitored the transmission console aboard Hesper as the waves of sound and light passed through interstellar space. The archive was no longer just a project. It was a living organism of culture and memory. Then, something extraordinary happened. A resonance returned. Not from the crimson planet Kurovel or from Tharnis, but from a system previously deemed empty, a binary star system orbiting the edge of the Varela 6 arm. The signals were faint, yet unmistakably structured. A sequence of harmonic tones, weaving together frequencies Elise recognized from the LEI archives, but layered with something new, patterns that echoed the human song. The message was not just heard. It was answered. Elisa's heart pounded as she decoded the incoming transmission. The reply spoke in a language both alien and familiar, a symphony of memory and hope. "We have heard your song. We remember you." It was the first true contact, proof that the chorus had reached another. The silence that had once swallowed civilizations was beginning to fill with voices. Elise leaned back, breathless but hopeful. For the first time, she believed humanity's song might join the cosmic symphony. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 19, A Meeting of Voices. The signal from the Varela 6 system was unlike any transmission humanity had received before. It was not merely a communication, it was an invitation. Elise and her team worked tirelessly to translate the harmonic patterns, unraveling layers of complex musical and linguistic structures embedded within. The message revealed a consciousness, an ancient network of civilizations that had survived Kurubal's shadow by embracing the very memory and resonance that had once doomed the Elii. They called themselves the Virelans. Through the chorus, they extended their hand, not in aggression, but in cautious kinship. The Virelans shared their own stories, histories of loss and rebirth, of civilizations torn apart and woven back together through shared memory. Their culture was built on harmonic resonance, much like the Elii, but tempered by millennia of struggle and adaptation. Elise felt a profound connection, a bridge forming across the vastness of space and time. The chorus became a true dialogue, a symphony of voices rising together. Yet, with every new connection, the memory of Kurubal lingered, a discordant note warning of the fragility of this cosmic harmony. Elise knew their journey was far from over. But as the voices gathered, weaving a tapestry of memory and hope, she understood one thing clearly. In the vast silence between the stars, the song of life would not be silenced. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 20, The Rising Harmony. The chorus had grown beyond Hesper's walls, spreading through the network of Terran colonies and outposts, reaching into the deep space listening arrays. It was no longer just humanity's message, it was a gathering of many voices, a weaving of histories and hopes into a living tapestry. Elise stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars that now felt less lonely. The Virelans had sent emissaries, forms of light and sound, manifesting within the communications array. Their presence was a delicate blend of art and consciousness, a reminder that life could take shapes unimaginable but still be understood. Together, humans and Virelans built the first resonance nexus, a massive archive and broadcast station designed to amplify the chorus and protect it from the fracturing influence of Kurubal's echoes. But Kurubal itself had not vanished. It lurked in the dark spaces between signals, a subtle distortion threatening to unravel the song. Its presence was a test, a reminder that memory was both fragile and vital. One night, as Elise tuned the nexus, a new pattern emerged in the noise, an anomaly distinct from Kurubal's influence. It was neither threat nor message, but a seed, a raw pulse of pure possibility. The chorus held its breath. Elise whispered softly, "This is our moment. To become more than echoes. To become a harmony." And with that, the song continued, rising into the infinite night. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 21, The Seed of Dawn. The pulse that emerged from the depths of the nexus was unlike anything anyone had anticipated. It was neither a message nor a signal, but a nascent bloom, a quantum bloom, of possibility. A pattern that shimmered with fractal complexity, shifting through dimensions beyond human comprehension. Elise stared at the transmission matrix, heart pounding. The seed seemed to grow within the resonance field, evolving rapidly, weaving new harmonics into the chorus. Echo, the luminous entity, manifested beside her, its form flickering with anticipation. "This is creation," Echo said, voice layered with awe. "A new memory forming from the void. The song is alive." The nexus began to hum with an unprecedented energy. Scientists and artists alike sensed the shift, the boundary between receiver and transmitter blurred. The chorus was no longer a broadcast. It was a living, evolving presence. But with creation came risk. Kurubal's shadow pulsed in reaction, the dissonant echoes growing louder, attempting to destabilize the seed. The fragile new harmony trembled under the pressure. Elise knew the choice humanity faced. To protect the seed meant embracing the unknown, to nurture a future not yet written. To reject it meant falling back into silence. Gathering her strength, she addressed the chorus broadcast once more, her voice calm but resolute. "We will carry the seed. We will sing the song forward, into the dawn." As the resonance waves folded across the cosmos, the seed pulsed brighter, a beacon of hope against the encroaching silence. And so, the song of memory, of life, and of endless possibility began its next movement. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 22, The Fractured Light. The seed's emergence triggered a cascade of events across the Nexus and beyond. As the new harmonic pattern spread, the boundaries between species, memories, and even realities began to blur. Elise found herself increasingly connected to Echo and the Chorus, not just through technology but in mind and spirit. Visions of the Elii, the Virellans, and countless other forgotten voices wove through her consciousness like threads in a vast tapestry. But with connection came vulnerability. Kuruvel's dissonant presence grew more insistent, a fracturing light threatening to unravel the delicate weave of the Chorus. It infiltrated signals, sowed confusion, and twisted memories into nightmares. The Nexus team worked feverishly to adapt the resonance patterns, weaving defenses into the song itself, harmonic shields and counterpoints designed to neutralize corruption with beauty. During one long night of tuning and listening, Elise received a vision, a memory fragment from the Elii archive she hadn't seen before. It showed a moment long past, a gathering of the ancient architects, their voices raised in a final, desperate chorus. They sang not to preserve themselves, but to seed a future, one beyond fear and forgetting. Elise whispered to Echo, they hoped someone would carry the song. Someone who could become the chorus. Echo replied softly, and you are that one. Steeling herself, Elise took her place at the Nexus helm, joining her voice with the growing symphony. Together, they sang. And the fractured light began to mend. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 23, The Chorus Unbound. The song grew. No longer confined by the metal walls of Hesper or the circuits of the Nexus, the chorus spread like wildfire, weaving through the vastness of space and the hearts of all who listened. From human colonies on distant worlds to the shimmering constructs of the Virellans, the resonance awakened hope, courage, and unity. The dissonance of Kuruvel's shadow remained, but it was no longer a looming threat, it had become part of the song's complexity, a reminder of the struggle that forged the harmony. Elise, Echo, and their allies watched as the chorus evolved beyond intention, becoming an entity of its own, a living memory shared by countless beings. Messages of peace and remembrance flowed freely, erasing the silence that had once swallowed civilizations whole. One evening, as Elise gazed at the stars from Hesper's observation deck, Echo appeared beside her in a gentle shimmer. Have we won? Elise asked softly. Echo's voice rippled like a warm chord. The song is eternal. It cannot be won or lost, only carried forward. Elise smiled, feeling the weight of countless voices intertwined within her. We are the chorus now, she whispered. And so the silence is broken. The Silence of Tharnis. Part 24, The Eternal Chorus. Years passed. The living archive, once a fragile experiment aboard a lonely station, became the heartbeat of a new cosmic era. Elise watched as generations grew, raised with the chorus as their heritage, an inheritance of memory, art, and unity spanning species and stars. The Nexus expanded, its resonant signals threading through wormholes and quantum networks, touching worlds yet undiscovered. Echo remained her constant companion, now fully integrated with the Nexus, a guardian of memory and guide through the endless song. Kuruvel's shadow had faded, not defeated, but transformed, its dissonance woven into the fabric of the chorus, giving depth and texture to the universal melody. One night, beneath a sky sparkling with distant suns, Elise spoke softly into the resonance. We remember. We sing. We become. And in reply, the stars themselves seemed to shimmer with 1,000 voices, an eternal chorus rising beyond time and silence. The song would never end. Because memory is life. And life is a song without end.